Good morning, my dear students. Now, I am going to discuss with you about an important poem, about a beautiful poem. The poem is written by a very famous poet of 20th century, Seamus Heaney. He was an Irish poet. He belongs to Ireland and he is also a Nobel laureate. Can you guess the poem? Yes, good. The name of the poem is Digging. 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 Now we are going to discuss about this poem. Seamus Heaney. You can very clearly see that image. Seamus Heaney, an Irish poet. He was born in 1939 and he left his body, mortal body, in very recently. It was in 2013. His full name was Seamus Justin Heaney. Seamus Justin Heaney. He was not only an Irish poet, he was a famous playwright and a well-known translator. For all his wonderful works, he received the prestigious Nobel Prize for Literature in 1995. He was one of the widely recognized major poets of 20th century. Now, I am going to read the poem. The poem appears on the screen. Very striking lines. The poem begins with very striking lines. Between my finger and my thumb, the square pen rests, snug as a gun. Under my window, a clean rasping sound when the spade sinks into gravelly ground. My father, digging. I look down till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low, comes up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. The cow's boot nestled on the lug, the shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. He rooted out all tops, buried the bridge edge deep to, to scatter new potatoes that we picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. By God, the old man could handle a spade. By God, the old man could handle a spade. Just like his old man, my grandfather cut more turf in a day than any other man on a toner's block. Once I carried him milk in a bottle, corked sloppily with pepper. He straightened up to drink it, then fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly, heaving swords over his shoulder, going down and down for the good turf, digging. The cold smell of potato mold, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, then cuts of an edge through living roots awaken in my head, but I have no spade to follow men like them. Between my finger and my thumb, the square pen rests. I will dig with it. In this, you can see the images. As I am discussing with you, digging is a very, very famous poem by Seamus Heaney. The poem Digging describes poet's recollection of his family relations and priorities. This poem describes poet's recollection. He remembers. What does he remember? He remembers his family relations and priorities in this poem. The poet is a writer by profession, but his father and grandfather, they are farmers. Now, poet Semasini is a writer by profession. He became a writer by profession, but his father and grandfather, they were farmers. The poet draws contrast between their professions, his profession and his father and grandfather's professions. He's slightly drawing a comparison and a contrast. The writer, when you observe the poem, when you read the poem, the writer sits by the window, as I have shown in the picture. As I have shown in the picture, the writer sits by the window. He writes with a pen in his hand. He is writing literature. He is creating literature. With what? With a pen in his hand. But his father is digging with a spade. A writer is also digging with a pen. What does he dig here? He digs past. He digs his past history, his family history. Whereas his father is digging with a spade in his hand in the field. He is planting potatoes. The poet, when he was sitting beside the window, the poet used to listen the sounds of the spade in the field. He was recollecting how his father and grandfather working in the field, how they are working hard to plant potatoes in the potato drills of the land. So all those ideas, beautiful ideas, he was just recollecting, he was remembering what their father and grandfather, how their father and grandfather were doing agriculture, was doing cultivation, because that is their family tradition. The poet remembers his father and grandfather working in the field. He also remembers, in the poem he says, he also remembers the smell of potatoes. But finally, he repents that he cannot continue his family tradition, because he has become a popular, famous poet. He is educated and has become modern and has become famous poet. In spite of his recognition as a popular poet, he feels a lot. He feels that he lost his family inheritance and tradition. You can see in the picture how an agriculturist is working hard in the field. But his sons might have become educated. His sons might have become poets or novelists or IAS officers or administrators or engineers or doctors. But this farmer, in which the image you are seeing, is working hard. That is the gap between his sons, his daughters, and himself. So the poet Semasini beautifully explained such a wonderful concept of generation gap and dignity of labor. He also focuses on the dignity of labor in this poem. So the poet highlights generation gap between agriculturists and educated. The poet highlights generation gap between agriculture and educated. You can see these pictures how the farmers are doing agriculture, and how the Semasini has become a voracious reader and a famous writer, a widely recognized poet, and below that Below that image, you can see an educated person. This is how the generation gap you can well identify in this poem. So, this very, very important poem, Digging, for your third semester. So, thus, the poem highlights the generation gap and dignity of labor beautifully for the younger generation. So if there are any questions, comments, queries, please post them in comment section, comment box. Thank you for watching my video. Thank you, one and all. Thank you very much.